Part 37. I Can See the Laws of Things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 361. Witnessing the battle between Lin En and the three giants, the immortal, the god of destiny, and the priest, Yi Zhan only felt more and more insignificant. The strength he was originally proud of. It seems now. It's just like a child taking a walk. And at the same time as the sword was slashed, the writing was used, and the power of various laws engraved on the body of the white sword also exploded at this moment. The sky turned into a sea of fire, with streaks of thunder and lightning flashing in the sea of fire, strong winds swept through, and patches of space were torn apart by sharp wind blades. In addition to the first time, there are many, many laws that are emerging with the sword struck by Lin En. The law of light, the law of darkness, the law of water, the law of power, the law of speed. Explosion rule. When these multiple laws are used together, Bai Jian's strike becomes so powerful that it is unimaginable. Countless powers of law attack the law shields used by the three giants, the immortal, the god of destiny, and the priest. Click. 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 Finally, after being bombarded by this violent storm of law power for 10 seconds, cracks appeared on this law shield. The attack of the law penetrated these cracks and attacked the three giants. A flame ignited on the immortal's body. The flame was as sharp as a knife, making him feel intense pain. His eyes widened subconsciously, and he couldn't help but exclaimed, "Oops! The shield was broken? The power of Emperor Lin's sword. Is it already so powerful?" The immortal just wanted to escape from the air. But it was already too late, his thoughts had just risen, and the law shield in front of him was completely shattered at this moment. It turned into countless fragments and scattered from high altitude. The attacks used by Lin En were like beasts escaping from the cage at this moment. The turbulent and violent bombardment hit the three giants, the immortal, the god of destiny, and the priest. Boom! 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 In an instant, Lin En slashed out with his sword, and all the countless laws contained in it exploded. The immortals also fell straight into the ground like cannonballs from the air. Under the three of them, huge potholes emerged one after another, and everything around them was destroyed beyond recognition. Yi Zhan's eyes became dull, and he subconsciously looked towards the ground where the three giants, the immortal, the god of destiny, and the priest, fell to the ground. Boom! 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 At this time, he could even clearly feel the beating of his heart. The brain also experienced swelling and pain, and his thinking became extremely confused. It's actually like this. Obviously. Obviously Lord Lin did. It was just a sword strike. But those three giants whose strength is similar to that of the Void Lord. They were all knocked back by this sword. This is incredible. At this time, all the laws that appeared when Lin En slashed them out with his sword disappeared. Lin En slowly put the sword back, put his hands behind his back, moved his body forward, and moved forward. A few seconds later, Lin appeared dozens of meters above the immortals and the others. He looked coldly down at the ground that had become even more dilapidated. Gusts of strong wind blew past him, blowing his black hair and flying in the air. Apart from the sound of wind, there is no other sound in this world. No one dared to make a sound at this time. Except for Lin himself. Lin En's lips slowly opened and he asked in a cold and ruthless tone. "Now, you three, do you have any other opinions?" Although Lin En's voice was not high, it could be clearly heard by everyone present. On the ground, the immortal lying in a deep pit struggled to stand up from the broken ground. His face was very gloomy, his brows were furrowed tightly, and several wrinkles appeared on his forehead. The originally proud pupils were now filled with complete shock and surprise. The immortal's eyes were fixed on Lin, and his arms hanging on both sides of his body were tense with muscles. After a long time, he just sighed with a complicated expression. Why? Failed. Unexpectedly. I really didn't expect that. There is such a strong person among the human race. I really can't imagine what if Emperor Lin had fought with all his strength just now. What terrible consequences will occur? Putting back the complicated thoughts in his heart, a hint of loss appeared in the immortal's eyes. He looked at Lin En, took a deep breath, and then said, Emperor Lin, I'm convinced. What are you going to do? It's all up to you. After saying that, the immortal turned around, reluctantly tore open a space crack, stepped into it, and quickly left Lin En's territory. Shortly after the immortal left, the two giants, the god of destiny and the priest, gradually stood up from the shattered ground. Their eyes were very complicated. After taking a deep look at Lin En, they left without saying a word. Only after confirming that the immortals and the others had completely left did Lin turn around again. He quickly returned to the air and sat down cross-legged again. He looked at the world with him as the center and a radius of millions of miles, and said coldly, Remember, I only give you 3 days. Then, Lin closed her eyes directly. At the same time, the earth was completely shaken. Lin En's battle with the 3 giants, the immortal, the god of destiny, and the priest, was also watched by many other giants of the old era. One after another, exclamations of great surprise continued to be heard from all the major forces on Earth. Failed? Actually defeated. The immortal, the god of destiny, and the priest are looking for a Lin Emperor. You will actually lose. Looking at this situation now in the world, the most powerful person should be Emperor Lin. All the beings were shocked by Lin En's strength. They secretly decided in their hearts that they would never provoke Lin En. Time passed like this bit by bit, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 3 days, Lin En kept her eyes closed. As soon as the 3rd day passed, he suddenly opened his closed eyes. 3 days have passed. Take care of yourself. Lin En's pupils shone with a mysterious luster, and his sight directly covered millions of miles in a radius. In just a few breaths, Lin En had already discovered the first alien that had not left the place. And the place where this alien race is located is the Black Snake Valley. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 362. Chapter 362, The Reappearance of the Top Spirit Gathering Array. Lin En's eyes slightly condensed, and a bit of impatience flashed in his eyes. Obviously, someone was openly challenging him. The capital of these guys who dared to challenge him was naturally not strength, but they were betting that Lin En would not dare to really do things. Lin En was naturally very clear about this. With a flicker of his body, the distance of tens of thousands of miles passed in an instant, and Lin En was already standing in front of the Black Snake Valley. Under the shock of the terrifying aura like the abyss and the prison, the creatures in the Black Snake Valley noticed it at the first time, and one by one they couldn't help but turn pale. Here, Emperor Lin is here. It's all the fault of the Black Snake King. He had to drag us together to fight against Emperor Lin. I really don't know what the Black Snake King is thinking. Is his brain crazy? He dared to disobey Lord Emperor Lin's words. In the Black Snake Valley, many creatures looked bitter. Doomsday is coming. Emperor Lin gave them a chance, but they didn't seize it. They didn't blame Emperor Lin, but only blamed the damned Black Snake King. Why didn't he let them leave and escape? At this moment, outside the Black Snake Valley, many shrimp soldiers and crab generals quickly rushed out, followed by the Black Snake King, looking at Emperor Lin with a cold look, obviously with too much fear in his heart. Lord Emperor Lin has come here, I am really honored. I wonder what Lord Emperor Lin is here for, the Black Snake King smiled and asked, obviously asking knowingly. Seeing this situation, Lin En's last bit of patience finally disappeared, and a little fierceness appeared in his eyes. Black Snake Valley, ignore this emperor's warning, and kill without mercy. The sharp voice was mixed with some cultivation power, and the mighty voice was like rolling thunder, reverberating in this world. The Black Snake King's face was filled with horror in an instant, and he immediately shouted loudly, "Emperor Lin! You dare to slaughter all living creatures, are you going to be the enemy of the whole world?" In response to the Black Snake King, a big sword fell from the sky. The white sword in Lin An's hand had been released at some point, and countless laws were added to it in an instant. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded to a huge size of tens of thousands of feet. The power of laws flowed on it, and this huge white sword actually showed a colorful and magnificent color, and the strong and terrifying pressure spread, which made the creatures in the Black Snake Valley tear their eyes and scream continuously. "Lin En, you are a conscienceless beast. Black Snake King, you will not die well." The next second, bang! The dazzling big sword was inserted into the ground with a bang, and the entire Black Snake Valley was instantly reduced to ashes. Lin En turned around, with a little coldness in his eyes. "I'm against the whole world, so what?" Lin En exerted the power of the law, his figure was like a ghost, and suddenly he appeared tens of thousands of miles away. This is the Giant Ape Hill. The Giant Ape clan is a race that appeared in the late stage of spiritual energy recovery, and its original form should be apes. At this moment, Lin En descended to the sky above the Giant Ape Hill, and the pressure descended like the power of heaven, causing a commotion in an instant. Lin En looked down with strange eyes, and finally understood the meaning of the word giant ape. The reason is nothing else, just because the figures running around in a hurry under his pressure below are really not just big, they are huge, super huge. Originally, Lin En thought that the Titan giant ape's body of more than 10 meters high was huge enough, but most of the giant apes here have huge bodies of at least 30 meters high. It's really a pity to destroy such a race. With Lin En's current strength and status, his vision is also different from before. As a member of the human race, it is his duty to protect the human race, but he is also somewhat reluctant to slaughter foreign races. In his eyes now, these are not just giant apes, but also the development of this world. However, as the current leader of the human race, Lin En must keep his word. At this moment, he looked at the figures fleeing in panic below, without any fluctuation in his eyes. The chief of the giant apes knelt down at the highest point of the hill at this moment. "Respected Lord Lin, this hill is where we were born and grew up, this is our home. We really can't let it go, please let us go." Lin En was silent. As far as he was concerned, he could naturally let these giant apes go, but he was representing the human race on this trip. "Giant Ape Hill, ignore this emperor's warning, and level the hill after 10 breaths." Lin En's face was calm, but he was sighing in his heart. This is the general trend of the world, and it cannot be changed by a moment of pity. He can only do this. And below, those huge bodies began to flee in all directions. One huge body after another, taking a step of dozens of meters, fled madly towards the outside of the hill. During this process, Lin En closed his eyes slightly, and the giant ape chief had a sad face, silently counting the time in his heart while watching the giant apes fleeing under the hill. Soon, 10 breaths passed, and the giant ape chief looked dejected, raised his head to the sky, waiting for the judgment to come. However, the expected judgment has not come yet. The chief couldn't help but look at Lin En in astonishment, only to see that Lin En was motionless, with his eyes closed, like an old monk in meditation. The chief couldn't help but look down the hill, and there were still many giant apes that had not escaped from the range of the hill. The chief couldn't help but feel a little anxious, and suddenly a glimmer of hope came in his heart. "Run, run quickly, escape all of you, I alone will be buried with the giant ape hill, you must survive." The clan leader showed hope, watching the clan members escape from the hill one by one, until the last one. At this moment, Lin En's voice rang again. 10 breaths have arrived, Giant Ape Hill, Kill without mercy. The clan leader was stunned, raised his head and looked at Lin En, and understood in an instant. 10 breaths have already arrived, how could Lin En not know? Lin En is forgiving them. Thinking of this, looking at Lin En's eyes that were as calm as a god, the giant ape clan leader couldn't help but kneel on the ground with tears. I kneel to thank Lord Lindy for his kindness. Lin En was speechless, and the colorful giant sword rose up. When the sword fell, the giant ape leader was still full of gratitude, but his expression was a little tragic, as if he was willing to die for a good cause. Turning around and leaving, Lin En rushed to the next one without stopping. Like these two places, Lin En would not exterminate all the people in all places, and the means were still quite gentle. It was not until an hour later that the purge came to an end. The figure appeared above the human race, and Lin En took a deep breath. 3 days have passed, and the human race within 1,000,000 miles has been cleared. From now on, this 1,000,000 miles of territory is the territory of our human race. The mighty voice was like the rolling power of heaven, echoing in all directions, and for a moment it seemed to stir up thousands of waves. Great! We finally have a home. You are worthy of being Lord Lin. This is the leader of our human race. With Lord Lin here, we will no longer be like dogs without a home. Cheers, murmurs, and excited shouts appeared in every corner of the promised land at this moment. 3 days ago, after solving the 3 giants, the humans on Earth had been teleported back and gathered into groups according to their respective tribes. Even the 3 giants had been defeated, and people's reverence for Lin En had reached an unimaginable level. At this moment, they looked up at Lin En in the sky, and they all screamed enthusiastically and excitedly. Lin En raised his hand and pressed it down, his face did not show any fluctuations, and the crowd quietly quieted down. Lin En spoke again, since you have all joined my Jizhu territory, you are all my people, and the environment you live in cannot be so simple. Lin En looked at the tribe below, who had temporarily set up tents and fires on the mess, and the purple light in his eyes suddenly became stronger. Raising his hand slightly, Lin En's eyes were shining with divine light, and mysterious fluctuations suddenly generated below. Swish! A spirit gathering array suddenly emerged from Lin En's head, and almost in an instant, rich spiritual energy gathered in the array. What is that? A top-level spirit gathering array? So powerful. But, it looks a bit small. Such a small array, Lord Lindy uses this thing to transform our environment. Our territory is 1,000,000 miles, how many arrays Lord Lindy has to arrange to cover it all? Countless people below raised their heads and looked at Lin En, and many of them recognized the spirit gathering array and subconsciously expressed their thoughts. But the next second, their eyes widened in disbelief, and the sound of sucking in cold air rang out one after another. I saw that the spirit gathering array held high in Lin En's hand suddenly expanded at a terrifying speed. 100 meters, thousands of meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters. My God, what is that? How is it possible? This is the spirit gathering array, this speed. What the hell? Am I dreaming? This is a top-level spirit gathering array. This scene is simply horrifying. The top-level spirit gathering array that can only be arranged by the genius of the times is expanding at such a desperate speed. Is this something that humans can do? Many people rubbed their eyes subconsciously, but found that when they opened their eyes again, everything they could see was covered by the spirit gathering array. This huge spirit gathering array covered the entire sky. Lin En took a deep breath and stopped expanding until the spirit gathering array covered 1,000,000 miles. At this moment, what Lin En held high in his hand was a 1,000,000-mile spirit gathering array covering the entire sky. Looking down at the dazed crowd below, Lin En's mouth slightly raised an imperceptible arc, and his raised hand suddenly flew down. Swish! From the sky, the huge spirit gathering array suddenly landed. Ah, it fell down dash. Run dash. This scene instantly scared countless people, just because of the scene at this moment. It was really like the whole sky suddenly fell down. Lin En was speechless, controlling the spirit gathering array to sink into the ground, and the divine light in his eyes was restrained. As the spirit gathering array was finalized, a majestic spiritual energy suddenly spread in, like a tsunami surging and washing away the sand, and instantly submerged this promised place. In just a few seconds, the spiritual energy here is no less than that of the Jiuzhu area. Everyone has seen that this emperor has arranged a giant top-level spirit gathering array covering 1,000,000 miles and sunk it into the ground. I hope that in the future, our human race will develop more prosperously. The rolling voice echoed, and the people below came to their senses. After reacting, they immediately cheered even more fiercely. Emperor Lin is mighty. Follow Emperor Lin until death. Long live Emperor Lin. While ecstatically feeling the incredibly rich spiritual energy, people cheered enthusiastically. Lin En smiled calmly and then spoke again. Now, I ask you, before I arrived, did the promised land have a leader? The voice echoed, and the huge promised land suddenly became quiet, and several tribal chiefs rose a little higher. Replying to Lord Lin, before you arrived, the leaders of each tribe had always discussed and acted together, and there was no leader. That's right. Lin En pondered slightly after hearing this, and scanned the situation of the various tribes below. The strength of the tribe leaders of the various tribes below mostly surpassed the demigods, and only a few people reached the level above the demigods, the God Emperor. Lin En kept scanning the crowd, and suddenly stopped when he passed Yi Zhan. Yi Zhan's strength has also reached the God Emperor, which is considered the top in the entire Promised Land. In addition, Yi Zhan's thoughts before Lin En's eyes showed strange colors, and suddenly remembered what Yi Zhan said when he saved Yi Zhan. The spokesperson that Lin En wants to choose must have a certain level of thinking. At present, he is not familiar with the humans on Earth, but Yi Zhan is the most suitable. Thinking of this, Lin En's expression suddenly showed a sense of majesty, and as Lin En's color changed, the entire sky behind Lin En seemed to darken a little, and a faint sense of killing quietly spread throughout the world. Facing foreign races, we humans need to be united. Now, this emperor will appoint a representative among you as the human spokesperson for our promised land and the manager of this world in the future. As soon as these words came out, countless people's eyes began to flash. As humans, they understood Lin En's meaning almost in an instant. This so-called spokesperson will be the king of this promised land in the future. With such a decision, countless people began to have their own intentions, especially the patriarchs of many tribes, who looked solemn. But even so, under the strong pressure scattered between heaven and earth, no one dared to make a sound at will. Lin En's eyes were like torches, and suddenly they were focused on Yi Zhan. Yi Zhan of the Xuanhuan tribe, listen to my orders. Today, I order you to be the deputy commander of the Jiuzhu region, and manage all human affairs on the ground. From now on, everyone on the ground should cooperate with the deputy commander, and seeing him is like seeing me in person. For the prosperity of the human race, everyone must work together and be united. Did you hear everything clearly? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 363. As the voice spread, the pressure on Lin En became heavier and heavier. When the whole paragraph was finished, the pressure was like the power of heaven, the abyss, and the prison. Countless people below could not help but tremble in their hearts and look solemn under such pressure. Some other thoughts were extinguished under such pressure. I will obey the order of Lord Lin. I have seen the deputy commander. I don't know who answered the first one subconsciously, and it seemed to be contagious. More and more people began to shout loudly. I will obey the order of Lord Lin. We have seen the deputy commander. I will obey the order of Lord Lin, we have seen the deputy commander. I will obey the order of Lord Lin, we have seen the deputy commander. The voices of countless people shouting in unison echoed in the world. This scene was really spectacular. Yi Zhan trembled with his hands. Everything in front of him seemed like a dream. He couldn't believe it. He became the king of so many people in one battle. Lin An looked at Yi Zhan's reaction below, with a little smile in his eyes. Yi Zhan, come. Yi Zhan was stunned for a moment, and immediately flew towards Lin An with a respectful look. Half a body behind Lin An, Yi Zhan respectfully clasped his fists. Yi Zhan greets Lord Lin Di. Lin An nodded. From now on, the human beings on earth will be handed over to you. What you said before is deeply in my heart. The current situation is turbulent, and we humans should unite. I believe you will not let me down. Yi Zhan was stunned, and then his expression was filled with strong excitement. Yi Zhan will definitely live up to Lord Lin Di's expectations. Lin An's expression calmed down, and he glanced at the people below. You can choose some people to assist you. How to manage this world is up to you. If you have any difficulties, you can come to me. Remember, I, Emperor Lin, stand behind you. Yi Zhan's expression moved, as if his body straightened a lot, and he bowed deeply with his fists clasped. The following matters are up to you. The voice echoed, and Lin An's figure quietly disappeared. When Yi Zhan raised his body, Lin An had disappeared. What Yi Zhan would do next was not Lin An's business. He only needed to check every few days. Lin An's idea was the same as the Kyushu domain in the sky. He solved external disputes, but still had to solve internal management. Managing the world was too complicated. He might as well improve his strength if he had time. Why bother to do that hard labor? At this moment, Lin An's figure went straight to the east. There was the territory of the Void Lord, the Void Palace. That day, the Void Lord could not help but attack the Kyushu domain first. Now, he also had to go to the Void Palace first. The will of heaven in his body was running, and the breath of the law of space was floating around Lin An. He moved forward so fast that it seemed like he was traveling through time and space. It didn't take long for him to reach the territory of the Void Palace. Without going any further, Lin An stopped at this place and said loudly, Lord of the Void, come out and see me. Lord of the Void had already sensed Lin An's arrival, and he even knew clearly what Lin An had done at the agreed place. In fact, not only Lord of the Void, but also immortals, God of Fate and Priest knew about it. At this moment, Lord of the Void looked extremely ugly. He was beaten half to death by Lin An that day, and he had not recovered 1/10 or 1/12 of his recovery until now. Now this evil star had come again. But now Lin An had arrived at the door of his house, and even mentioned his name as soon as he opened his mouth, so he really had to go out. So, soon after, the figure of Lord of the Void appeared in front of Lin An. Emperor Lin, I had already admitted defeat that day, what are you doing here now? Looking at Lin An, Lord of the Void wanted to slap him. If possible, he really didn't want to see this man again. Lin An naturally saw Lord of the Void's expression, but he didn't show any expression, but just spoke calmly. Humanity has been bullied by you a bit badly, 5,000 small worlds, as compensation. After the voice fell, the Void Lord suddenly widened his eyes and took a deep breath in his chest. What did you say? Lin An had no expression on his face and said lightly, why, did I hit your head that day? You can't even hear clearly. The Void Lord twitched his mouth fiercely, frowned and tried to say something fierce for a long time, but he couldn't say a word. What is this for? This is a robbery. Blatant robbery. 5,000 small worlds are just a mouthful. After a long silence, the Void Lord spoke slowly, not so many, at most 2,000. Lin An looked at him lightly, and the Void Lord even felt a hint of teasing. Void Lord, think clearly before speaking. The Void Lord was silent, and endured for a long time before finally speaking again. I know I have provoked you before, so this is only natural, but, this is only this time. The Void Lord looked quite serious, but deep down he was cursing. If he came to rob every once in a while, how could he, the Void Lord, live? Can he still live? Lin An smiled, his eyes as clear as water remained calm. Do you have the qualifications to negotiate terms? You. The Void Lord's eyes widened with anger, and his silver teeth were about to break. But after staring at him fiercely for a moment, the Void Lord suddenly lowered his head. Lin An was right. He was defeated so thoroughly that day that he was not even evenly matched. It was a crushing defeat. He really had no right to negotiate terms. Forget it, it's just external things. The Void Lord waved his hand, and in an instant, small worlds surrounded the two of them. Lin An glanced and roughly knew the quality of these small worlds. It must be said that the Void Lord was still very sincere. After getting 5,000 small worlds, Lin An went to the God Court, the Immortal Palace and the Court of Destiny one after another, but each person only took 3,000 small worlds. As the first guy to attack the 9 provinces, the Void Lord was really treated well by Lin An. Back to the agreed place, Lin An found that Yi Zhan had completed the preliminary appointment and selected several clan leaders of the primary God Emperor as his subordinates. The people below had also been distributed, and many people had spread out. The action is quite fast, Lin An said secretly. Yi Zhan was immediately excited when he saw Lin An appear. Lin An immediately waved his hand and told him to do his own thing. Lin An stood high in the sky, and 14,000 small worlds appeared around him. Purple and black eyes were flowing, and an incomparable terrifying aura appeared in the world. Yes, there were 14,000 small worlds in total. Lin An planned to give 9,000 to the Promised Land, and the remaining 5,000 to the Jiuzhu region. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 364. The Law of Time. A faint voice emerged, the sky roulette began to spin crazily, and Lin An's eyes glowed with purple light. Mysterious fluctuations spread out at this moment, and at some point, Lin An's whole body seemed to have fallen into stillness. The floating clouds in the sky, the floating breeze, and even the flowing air all around suddenly came to a standstill. Also falling into stasis were the 9,000 worlds around Lin An. The laws of space. Lin An raised his hands. The left hand was the law of time, and the right hand was the law of space. The two most mysterious and wonderful laws in the world once again began to merge in Lin An's hands. The picture of creating a world emerged again, and soon after, 10 more small worlds appeared around Lin An. It's just that this is a small world, completely different from the other 9,000 worlds. The distorted light and scattered sense of time seem to be 10 mysterious secret realms. After placing the 10 small worlds at the top and the other 9,000 worlds below them, Lin slowly exhaled. Yazan, these 9,000 worlds contain countless resources, which are used to build our human base. As for the 10 small worlds at the top, I created them myself. The time flow rate inside them is 50 times that of the outside world, which can allow when people with extraordinary talents go to practice. You should also remember to improve your strength. The sound suddenly reached Yi Zhan's ears. Yi Zhan couldn't help but be startled, and then looked at Lin An in the sky. Lin An nodded at him, raised his hand, and a spatial crack was torn open. Lin An stepped forward and disappeared. Yi Zhan was stunned for a long time, thinking about Lin An's words. 9,000 worlds, countless resources. Create your own world, time flows 50 times faster. 50 times the time, 50 times the cultivation speed. Yi Zhan reacted for a long time, and then took a deep breath. Emperor Lin is truly a god. The spatial cracks unfolded, and Lin An returned to the Kyushu territory in one step. Back here, Lin summoned Helen. Now, a short period of time has passed, and Helen has reached the demigod realm and has become the second demigod in the Kyushu territory. Lin En estimates that Daoyi may have also entered the demigod state. But, demigod is not enough. Helen has met Chief Lin. Helen seemed very happy to see Lin and said hello excitedly. Lin En looked calm. Call the Kyushu guards to assemble. Yes. Helen went to gather the Kyushu guards, and Lin followed suit. After all this time, the children at the time had obviously grown to an astonishing level. Lin asked them to line up in a long line again. It's this formation again. It was like this when Commander Lin En awakened our life wheel. We're in this formation again. Does Chief Lin En want to give us another life wheel? Great, we're going to have a new life wheel. There were bursts of whispers, and Lin's expression remained unchanged as he quietly watched them quickly line up. Soon, the formation was completed. Tell me, what is the name of your team? Lin En said calmly. Kyushu Guards. A thin voice came out, and Lin En couldn't help but frown. In an instant, a strong pressure came out from his body. Are you all pretty girls? Are you all so arrogant? For a moment, there was a moment of stagnation, and then a deafening sound suddenly sounded. Kyushu Guards. Lin En's expression softened slightly, but his voice was still a little bit harsh. The Kyushu Guards, this is our army in the Kyushu region. You are all soldiers, and soldiers must act like soldiers. But look at what you look like. Whispering and showing no discipline, do you look like soldiers? The sound echoed, and the whole place was silent. Helen suddenly took a few steps forward. Instructor Lin. This is my dereliction of duty, please punish me. With his stubborn look and unyielding gaze, Lin couldn't help but feel shaken in his heart. He still remembered that it was Helen like this who touched him for the first time. Lin En's expression remained unchanged. I will be punished, but not now. You should step back first. Helen stared at Lin stubbornly for a second, then stepped back. Lin En looked at the Juya guards in front of him again. I don't want anyone to talk nonsense next time. You are soldiers, not the talkative women with mean-spirited parents in the streets. Listen clearly. Listen clearly. Listening to this neat voice, Lin En nodded secretly, and then looked at the member at the front. You, come here. The young man's expression suddenly changed and he came over. Purple light flowed in Lin En's eyes, and the heavenly wheel in his body was secretly rotating. The law of fire, the wind helps the fire, and I will add another law of wind to you. After finishing speaking, Lin stretched out her index finger and touched his forehead. The familiar process, the same excited and inexplicable gaze, but this time, there is no longer those subconscious exclamations. Lin En could see his joy, but his expression did not waver at all. Next. The law of thunder, water can conduct electricity, I will give you another law of water. Next one. The law of metal, sharpness is the edge, I will add another sharp law to you. Next one. Each member walked away with ecstasy in their eyes, and soon, the last member also had a new rule. Lin turned his head slightly and looked at Helen. Helen was also delighted, but a little nervous. She had failed in her duty. Instructor Lin would not give me the law. Standing face to face, Helen's eyes flickered a little. Lin thought for a while and saw Helen's state. Sighing inwardly, Lin's expression remained unchanged. He raised his hand and stretched it to Helen's forehead. Helen's eyes were fixed, and she did not dodge at all. Pointed with the index finger, and separated at a touch. The combination of the law of power and the law of speed, and the defense law and the metal law are added to you. The defense law escorts your original path, and the metal law gives you new means. After feeling it silently for 2 seconds, Helen was suddenly surprised. Thank you, Chief Lin. Lin smiled slightly, I know you've been working hard, keep up the good work. Helen stood up straight immediately, yes, Chief Lin, I will do my best. Lin nodded, signaling Helen to go down, but Helen didn't move, just looked nervous for a moment, a little embarrassed. Chief Lin, what's my punishment? You didn't deduct my new rules, then, what's my punishment? Lin almost laughed. Who said I'm going to deduct your new rules? Want to know your punishment? Then I tell you, your rules are twice as many as others, and you also need to pay twice as much. Work hard to master your new power, this is your punishment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 365. Helen was stunned for a moment, and soon understood what Lin An meant. This so-called punishment was just a casual comment, and Lin An had no intention of blaming her at all. Helen's beautiful eyes flashed with gratitude, and she clasped her fists heavily. I will definitely live up to Commander Lin An's expectations. Lin An nodded with a smile in his eyes, his voice echoed, and the others had already left. I hope that next time I come, I can see a different Kyushu guards. The voice echoed. Helen looked at the place where Lin disappeared. Determination appeared on her pretty face again. Definitely. In the infinite dark universe, there are dots of starlight. Lin knows that every bit of starlight is an unknown planet. The ancient tree of life shrouded by the space barrier is suspended quietly, exuding a faint brilliance, and is unique. Perhaps in the endlessly distant unknown place, from the perspective there, the ancient tree of life in front of you is also just a part of the thousands of stars. The universe is vast and mysterious. Are there other life forms deep in the universe? What is outside the universe? Lin An's eyes were profound. While Lin An was staring at the universe, Chen Daoming's figure suddenly appeared behind him. Lin, you're back. Lin An waved out 5,000 small worlds. Many small worlds densely covered a large area. Chen Daoming was stunned. Another 5,000 small worlds. Lin An nodded lightly. I went to rob the 4 giants on the earth. I left 9,000 for the humans on the earth, and the 5,000 were left for the Kyushu region. Robbed the 4 giants. Chen Daoming opened his mouth and repeated something stumblingly after a long while. His heart that had just calmed down began to tremble again. The previous Void Lord casually slapped him, and he, Chen Daoming, might not be able to block it. Such a being was actually robbed by Lin An, and 4 of them were robbed at the same time. Thinking of this, Chen Daoming asked weakly, have you fought them? Lin nodded lightly, yes, I did. Seeing Lin An's calm look, Chen Ming fell silent again. Needless to say, Lin An must have defeated the 4 giants and suppressed the 4 giants by himself. Facts have proven that it was a right decision to give up the position of control to him. In my hands, the limit of the 9 provinces' territory is demigod, but in his hands, this limit, at least until now, is still unclear. Sighing secretly, Chen Daoming had a lot of emotions, and Lin An's voice came again at this time. I have divided an area on the earth that is exclusive to the human race, and foreigners are not allowed to enter. Now, I have integrated all the humans on the earth into the Kyushu domain. In addition, I have appointed a deputy commander of the ground on earth. From now on, you will be the deputy commander of the sky. Chen Daoming just responded. In his opinion, after teaching the 4 giants a lesson, all the following things should be taken for granted. After explaining everything, Lin An's figure disappeared in a flash. Chen Daoming thought for a moment, put away 5,000 little worlds and left. And Lin An's figure appeared on the top of the tree. Just as she was about to push the door open, the door was suddenly pushed open. Kameng looked at the man in front of her, with deep affection in her beautiful eyes. Lin, you're back. Lin smiled slightly, well, I'm back. Walking forward, Lin gave her a big hug, then hugged her and walked inside. Ban Meng seemed to have known about Lin An's return for a long time. He was leaning on the back of the sofa chair and looking at him steadily with his autumn eyes. Both of their sisters had good cultivation, so they had naturally noticed Lin En's approach long ago. Only King Ian, the girl, was still sitting on the sofa eating fruit. Suddenly she heard the sound of opening the door and turned around. "Brother! You're back." King Ian excitedly put on her shoes and ran over immediately, looking as lively as ever. Lin En's eyes were filled with doting, and she hugged King Ian, who ran over, and then went to take care of Ban Men. This girl in Ban Men also made him feel distressed. After some flirting, the three girls sat on the sofa together, with Lin standing in front of them. Lin En's expression was rare and serious. "King Ian, I plan to open your life wheel." King Ian couldn't help being stunned. "Open the life wheel? Is this okay?" Lin nodded. "I can help you, and it can be more than one attribute." King Ian smiled. "Listen to my brother, I can drive it for me if I want." However, Ban Meng and Qing Meng could not help but shrink their pupils when they heard this. There was more than one attribute. Could it be said that, the life will you help others awaken can be the same as the laws of all things that you control, and can be controlled as you wish? Lin En couldn't help but glance at Ban Meng in surprise. This girl was still so smart. Ban Men is right. I can unlock the life will of any attribute for you. But the human soul is mysterious and unpredictable. The attributes that each person can match are limited. Too many attributes are not a good thing. Kimeng nodded suddenly, but soon turned her beautiful eyes, a little unconvinced. "Then what kind of monster are you?" Lin couldn't help laughing. Compared with him? With the existence of the Eye of Law, who in this world can compare with him? I founded the Fairy Army and the Kyushu Guards. Their mission is to protect the Kyushu region. But you are different. Your power is not to protect others, but only to protect yourself. King Ian thought about it, and nodded quickly. "That's right, Sister Banmen and Sister Kimeng are so powerful, I also want power." Lin En finally smiled, raised his finger and gently touched her forehead. He had observed King Ian's situation carefully when he came back this time. The law that King Ian is most compatible with is the law of life. This is extremely beyond Lin En's expectations. Even the children in the Juzhu Guard who are compatible with the law of life are very few. You know, the Juzhu Guard is selected from the entire Juzhu area. The fluctuations of the law of life flow. King Ian closed her eyes slightly, and a mysterious breath slowly spread from her body. It was the fluctuation of the roulette wheel. And soon, in addition to this breath of life, there was a more mysterious fluctuation. You can clearly see the distortion of light in the air, as if the space is falling. The law of time. In addition to time, new distortions began to appear, sometimes fast and sometimes slow and unpredictable. The law of speed. Three different laws intertwined, entangled, and converged at this moment, and unconsciously began to condense the prototype of the will of life. With the law of life as the main, and the laws of time and speed as the auxiliary, one thought determines reincarnation and life and death, and one thought changes the world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 366. In the Juzhu area, on the ancient tree of life, Lin En's hut stood proudly at the top, independent of all the continents. At this moment, around Lin En's hut, unimaginable vortices gathered at some point. The huge and heavy airflow rolled up the terrifying might of the changing wind and clouds. The ancient tree of life was so huge that this might actually covered half of the area. Deep purple thunders were winding through it, and the thunder was so huge that it looked like an ancient thunder dragon, emitting a dazzling light in this dark universe. My God, what is that? What's going on? Are there foreign tribes coming again? Countless exclamations sounded from the various continents on the ancient tree, and people looked up at the doomsday-like scene above with horror. And Chendeaming also suddenly appeared outside the continent, floating in front of the ancient tree and looking up with a solemn expression. What is Lin An doing? This might is countless times more terrifying than my promotion to demigod. The old face of the ancient tree of life in front of Chendeaming suddenly appeared. But at this moment, the old face was full of disbelief, and even had an inexplicable awe. This world can have such a favorite. In the hut, Lin An's eyes shone with purple light, and the will of heaven in his body was spinning frantically. He naturally felt the unpredictable might outside, and even he was a little surprised at this moment. I didn't expect King Ian's awakening to be so extraordinary, but why is that? King Ian seems to have nothing unusual except that it is extremely consistent with the law of life. Lin An's face was a little solemn, and it was not good to be distracted at this moment, so he had to concentrate on exerting strength. And in King Ian's body, the vague prototype began to become clearer and more stable, and it finally condensed into a complete will before long. In an instant, Lin An retracted his fingers, and King Ian opened his eyes. What kind of breath was that? It was like the sacred temperament of the goddess of life, but it was shrouded in an indescribable mysterious breath, which made people feel a little awe involuntarily. At this moment, Lin An had an illusion that his King Ian had changed. That kind of look was as cold as the power of heaven. It was a strong fluctuation of the law. Fortunately, this look was only emitted at the moment when King Ian's life will was completed, and it soon returned to its original appearance. Lin An couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He was too familiar with that look. Didn't he have that kind of look in the past? Fortunately, King Ian's indifference was only a moment. The next second, King Ian in front of him suddenly smiled. "Thank you, brother." Lin An subconsciously touched his head. "The roulette still needs to be familiar, you practice with peace of mind first, I'm going out for a while." King Ian smiled sweetly, as if she wanted to say something, but she nodded without saying anything. On the other side, Ban Meng and Chi Meng had some doubts in their eyes, but Lin An didn't say much, because he didn't know what was going on. It's not that he hasn't carved the will of the law of life before. There are some children in the Juz who guard, but no one has ever created such a grand momentum today. The storm outside disappeared the moment King Ian opened her eyes. Lin An walked out of the door and sat on the trunk of the ancient tree of life. "Tell me about what happened just now." Lin An also felt the huge reaction of the ancient tree of life just now. This ancient tree must know something, so Lin An came to find it as soon as possible. Facing Lin An's question, the old face appeared on the trunk in the next second. "King Ian is worthy of being called the goddess of life." Lin An was stunned. "Why?" The ancient tree of life was full of emotion. "Compared with you, you control the power of the law. Compared with others, your power can be said to be the origin, and King Ian is the same. But the law you control is all, you are the darling of all laws, and King Ian is only the darling of the law of life. My power is also the law of life, but I can tell you that in terms of the control of the law, King Ian has far surpassed me. The degree of fit between her and the law of life is simply incredible." Lin An was silent. He can control the law because of the eye of heaven, only because of the system. As a person who has traveled through time and space, Lin An knows that the system is omnipotent. And King Ian, why can she also control the law? You know, controlling the law is the power of rolling heavenly power, this is the power of heaven. Now King Ian has directly reached the level of a national level god of law at the moment of awakening the will of life. Lin An is indeed very surprised, but controlling the law is something that even demigods can hardly achieve. Then do you know why, after a long while, Lin An finally spoke again. The ancient tree of life looked helpless. "I don't know either. I only know that I should call her the goddess of life." Lin An nodded, got up and returned to the hut. When he returned to the hut, Lin En was surprised to find that the fluctuations on King Ian's body had reached the level of a world-class magic god. On the other side, Chi Meng and Ban Meng were also stunned, obviously frightened by King Ian's posture. Lin En shook his head and signaled them not to disturb King Ian. After passing the living room and standing at the stairs, Chi Meng could no longer resist her curiosity. Lin En, what's going on with King Ian? This realm is a bit too scary. It's not as fast as riding a rocket. Lin En also smiled bitterly, indeed. Compared with her speed, even I am ashamed. But this is not a bad thing, it's just that King Ian's fit with the law of life is a little higher, which is only good for her. Kimeng smiled helplessly, the fit is a little higher, how high does it have to be this high? Lin En stayed at home for many days. These days, in addition to being warm, Lin En also practiced on his own. Beyond the Divine Emperor is still not the end, Lin En has felt it now. Beyond the Divine Emperor is the Divine Wasteland, which symbolizes the desolation of miracles. This realm is very dangerous, and if you are not careful, you will end up with a body and soul destroyed, so this realm is full of desolation. And Lin En has now touched the Divine Wasteland, and can even feel that the Divine Wasteland is still not the end, and above the Divine Wasteland is eternity. It is precisely because he feels the direction ahead that Lin En will continue to work hard. In theory, with Lin En's current combat power, this world should be invincible, but Lin En knows that this is not the case. At Lin En's level, he could already have a vague premonition, coming from an unknown place, and still had a strange feeling. This was an indescribable feeling, more like a warning to himself. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 367. Lin En didn't know what this feeling was. Predicting the future? Maybe it could be somewhat relevant, but it wasn't accurate. It should be said that this was a kind of perception in the dark. Lin En knew deeply that this feeling couldn't be groundless, so Lin En still had the motivation to move forward. King Ian's realm stopped after reaching the same demigod level as Ban Meng and Chi Meng. Lin En also carefully investigated King Ian's situation. To be precise, King Ian only reached the level of demigod in the law of life. The law of time and the law of speed were still like a child. Regarding the law of time and the law of speed, Lin En, Ban Meng and Chi Meng reached a consensus and hoped that King Ian would not give up. The law of life is advancing by leaps and bounds, while the law of time and the law of speed are like a tortoise's speed. King Ian would naturally have some resistance. This is human nature. However, one more ability means one more power. The combined power is definitely not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. It is a geometric increase. At this moment, King Ian was sitting in the living room, tugging at her clothes sadly, as if she had suffered a great injustice. The law of time and the law of speed are too difficult. The law of life is my right and left hands. The law of time and the law of speed are like stepmothers. Faced with this pitiful appearance, Lin En had to go up and rub her hair. Come on, you can do it. No, I can't. Brother will give you a reward if you make progress. No, I don't want it. I don't want it. Brother will give you a hug for every improvement you make. In the living room, King Ian was stunned for a moment, and suddenly stood up and ran to practice in a hurry. Lin En. On the side, Chi Meng and Ban Meng were laughing. Chi Meng pinched her nose, brother, I want a hug too. Lin En had a calm face, I'll give it to you when I reach the God Emperor. Chi Meng stared and lay down on the sofa. What about the God Emperor? You think the God Emperor is a cabbage? Only Lin En has reached it in the entire human race. Earth, the Void Palace. Damn it, why is Lin En's spirit gathering array so terrifying? The spiritual energy here is much thinner. If this continues, the spiritual energy here will be sucked dry. The Void Lord had a gloomy face, and slapped the handle of the chair in a rage. Bang! With a loud noise, the handle of the chair shattered, and even half of the chair turned into ashes. The Void Lord almost fell down. "Asshole," the Void Lord hurriedly stood up, cursed, turned around and kicked the chair to pieces, and the expression on his face became more and more gloomy. "Asshole. I can't stand it anymore." Not long after, the voice of the immortal suddenly came from here. "Void Lord, the spiritual energy here is getting thinner and thinner. How is the situation over there?" The Void Lord opened his eyes, and there was a sinister look in his eyes. "It's the same for me. I'm afraid it won't be long before the spiritual energy here will dry up. I'm afraid it will degenerate to the point of the first spiritual energy revival." "It's the same here," the voice of the God of Destiny came slowly. "This Lindy is simply too much. He came to me to extort money a few days ago." The Void Lord was furious, and the space around him was a little turbulent. Many of the Void demons outside were startled, looking at the location of the Void Hall, and then couldn't help but shook their heads secretly. Since the Void Lord was defeated by Lindy, such situations have happened from time to time, and they have become accustomed to it. In front of the Lord of the Void, the priest's voice sounded, "We are the same. That time, Emperor Lin also took away 3,000 small worlds from me." The Lord of the Void couldn't help but stare. "What did you say? 3,000? In the far north of the earth?" The priest's face changed. "Could it be that you were not blackmailed for 3,000? The Lord of the Void thought about it, and suddenly felt something bad in his heart. He spoke again calmly, "God of Destiny, Immortal, how about you? How much were you blackmailed?" 3,000. 3,000. The Lord of the Void took a deep breath, and the expression on his face could no longer be maintained. The deep anger almost broke through his reason. "Asshole. Too much bullying, too much bullying." The Immortal couldn't help but be surprised. "Why, Lord of the Void, the amount you were blackmailed for was not 3,000. Asshole Lindy, he blackmailed me for 5,000. "What?" In the west of the earth, the Immortal's tone changed, and then he couldn't help but smile a little, almost laughing out loud. He thought that being blackmailed for 3,000 was bad enough, but he didn't expect that someone was worse off than him. On the other side, the priest and the God of Destiny had the same feeling, but because of face, they didn't show any expression. The Lord of the Void looked at the sky fiercely. "The bastard Emperor Lin is too much. I, the Lord of the Void, have been in power for countless years, and I have never encountered such a humiliation. This matter must be explained. Otherwise, I, the Lord of the Void, will destroy his 9 provinces at the cost of my life." The priest was stunned, and then said quietly, "Lord of the Void should calm down. Emperor Lin is powerful, and the 3 of us couldn't get away with it that day, let alone you alone, and you had already fought that day." The God of Destiny also said, "You and I have lived for countless years, but these are just some external things, so why should we care? Emperor Lin didn't kill us all that day, so don't lose your mind. What the God of Destiny said is true. For people at our level, killing is just a thought away. Lord of the Void, you'd better not provoke Emperor Lin. To put it bluntly, provoking him now is courting death." Lord of the Void had a gloomy face and spoke again after a long while. "But Emperor Lin is really too much. The spiritual energy is thinning so fast. In a few days, I'm afraid we can't even guarantee the environment for cultivation." "That's better than losing your life," the Immortal spoke. Lord of the Void sighed, and the air soon became quiet. The 3 lords all stopped talking, and Lord of the Void lost his temper. "It's just talk to say that everything will be destroyed, but at their level, life is the most important thing. Aura is like water flow. The spiritual energy outside the gathering array is thin, and the spiritual energy from other directions of the earth will naturally fill it in slowly, and the spiritual energy that fills in will be absorbed by the gathering array again. In this way, the areas where the 4 lords are located will naturally be affected. Lin En had anticipated all of this when he chose such a huge spirit gathering formation that day, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. After that battle, the balance of status was no longer balanced, and Lin En alone was enough to overwhelm the four of them. Any objections? Who dares to have an objection? If you have an objection, let's fight. Who dares? I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 368. Lin En started his retreat again. However, the retreat time was very short. Lin En would wake up every few days to check on the situation of King Ian and the other two, as well as the 9 netherworld and the earth. Now as the leader of the human race, Lin En naturally had to check on them from time to time. After about a month, a strong pressure flashed by. Lin En opened his eyes again, with a strong purple glow in his left eye and a dark black in his right eye. However, it can be clearly seen that both the left and right eyes have a hint of gold in them. Lin En knew that when the purple completely turned into purple gold and the black completely turned into black gold, that was when he arrived at the godly wilderness. The light converged and returned to the plain black again. Lin En stood up and walked out. It's been a month. It's time to check on the situation below. Muttering to himself, Lin En walked out of his room and came to the living room on the first floor. Ban Meng and Chi Meng were leaning on the corner of the sofa and chatting about something, while King Ian was meditating upstairs. As soon as he saw Lin En coming out, Ban Meng sat up straight and looked at him with burning eyes, but Chi Meng was still leaning on the sofa, looking quite comfortable. Lin En walked over and hugged Ban Meng. Missed me? Ban Meng pursed her lips, and a blush appeared on her beautiful face, but she did not refute anything. Lin En's mind moved, and suddenly lowered her head and kissed her. Ban Meng's body trembled, and she subconsciously closed her crystal eyes. Chi Meng looked at them with a sour heart for nearly a minute. After a minute, Lin En raised his head and looked at Chi Meng with beautiful eyes, a smile appeared on his face, and then walked over. In fact, Lin En had the same attitude towards Ban Meng and Chi Meng. They were both his women, and there was no order of priority. However, his thoughts in his heart were one thing, and his actions were another. This matter of favoritism, no matter whether the two sisters could say it or not, he could not do it at all. Hey, women! After another minute, their lips parted, and Lin En leaned in the middle of the sofa, one on each side of the two sisters. I'm going to take a look at the earth, and I guess I'll be back in a few days. Ban Meng just nodded and didn't say much, while Chi Meng crossed her legs and said faintly, Go, go, just don't bring anyone back, the 3 of you at home are enough for you to enjoy. Lin En smiled and didn't say much, raised her hand and waved a space crack and walked in. The so-called not allowed to mess around is naturally just a complaint. Lin En still knows Chi Meng's temper, after all, they have been friends for so many years. At this moment, Lin En has already appeared on the earth, and the space crack behind him slowly closed. What appeared in front of him was a completely different scene. The place where Lin En landed was not far from the agreed place. At this moment, the agreed place, which was originally a ruin, has a large-scale palace complex. These palace complexes are different from modern buildings, but have a strong classical style, pavilions, towers, and carved railings. At the outermost edge of this palace, there are still many half-built houses. Lin En couldn't help but show a strange look in his eyes. This style is unique. Humans on Earth come from different eras. Modern humans are all in the Juyu domain, so the buildings built by humans here integrate elements from different eras. It is quite unique. It can be seen that this place was completed first. I think this promised place will be the center in the future. Around this center, the building complex will slowly expand outward. Lin En landed on the ground and walked towards the building complex. A large number of people gathered in the unfinished buildings. Some of them carried neat stones, some pulled a cart of soil, and some stood on the eaves and hammered with hammers. It was a thriving scene. Passing by these semi-finished products, Lin An quickly walked into the building complex, restrained his own breath, and looked like an ordinary person. The streets were all gray slabs. Although they were slabs, they were paved very flat, just like the cement roads in Zhuzhou Domain. On both sides of the street, you can also see many shops that have been opened. It was daytime at this moment, and there were not many people on the street. I think most people were busy expanding the periphery, and maybe it would be lively at night. Lin An found a tavern and went in. "Please come in, sir," the waiter greeted him warmly, his face full of joy. Lin An thought for a while, "I need a seat by the window." The waiter smiled as usual, "Okay. Please come this way, sir." The waiter bent down in front, stretched out his hand to make a gesture of invitation, and then went to the stairs not far away. Lin An felt a little strange in his heart. This was the first time he came to such a store. In the past, such scenes could only be seen in TV dramas, but now he was in the scene. He came to the window on the second floor. There were only 2 tables of people on the second floor, one at the innermost, and the other table was also by the window. Lin An glanced at them. Most of these people had some strength, but their realms were not high. The highest one was only a national-level magic god. The people at both tables looked at Lin An at the same time, but they didn't recognize him. Maybe they didn't dare to recognize him even if they did. Lord Lin De was drinking with them in a tavern? Who would have thought of such a thing? They wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. After ordering a few side dishes and a pot of soju, Lin An sat down. There is a railing next to the table, and you can see the street below at a glance. Lin An thinks this place is pretty good. "Hey, have you heard that there is a new world-class magic god in the next group? He is very arrogant as soon as he gets to the top, and he is so cruel to the people below. That's his capital. If you have that ability, you can also be arrogant. Hey, I don't know when our hard days will end. Wang Yu is really not a human being. Hey, be careful that there are airs on the wall. If Lord Wang hears it, you will be in trouble." Sparse voices came over, and Lin An looked downstairs quietly, drinking a sip of soju from time to time, his face calm as water, neither sad nor happy. Where there are people, there are rivers and lakes, and where there are interests, there are disputes. He can't control these. In a sense, he can be called the savior of mankind. He defeated the 4 giants and saved mankind from disaster. But he can save those lives, but he can't save people's hearts. However, if they are like this, then the lives of ordinary people in this world must be even more miserable. Lin An couldn't help but think of himself. In those years, he was also of low talent, but he was still qualified to work hard, but he lived a hard life. What about those who don't have the will of fate and don't even have the qualifications to work hard? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 369. Find some time to awaken the life wheels of all mankind. Lin An was silent for a moment, and suddenly this terrible idea came to his mind. All mankind has awakened the will of life, which means that all people are soldiers, and the overall strength of the entire human race will be greatly improved. Facing the demons and other races under the 4 giants, there will also be more guarantees of survival. Even if you are a waste in cultivation, you will still have the qualifications to change your life. It's just that such a thing is simply a huge project, even for Lin An. It's a bit troublesome. Lin An held his forehead, lowered his head and took a sip of wine, looking like he had a headache. As everyone knows, such unimaginable things are just a headache in Lin An's eyes. If word of this spreads, it will definitely cause an uproar in the entire world. You know, this is forcibly awakening the will of destiny, this is changing destiny against the will of heaven. After a while, Lin An shook his head, his expression became calm again, and he looked downstairs and into the distance again. Lin An's thoughts had already spread out, like a rising tide, in all directions. There was a man sweating profusely, pulling the car hard, and the car was filled with a whole load of neat slates. Although the man's face showed fatigue, his eyes were still bright and full of energy. There is a woman in front of the weaving table, skillfully playing with needle and thread in her hands. The thin threads are constantly shuttled between them, gradually forming the prototype of clothing. There were children gathering in the courtyard, and crisp laughter kept coming from their mouths. They were chasing each other and playing with innocent smiles on their faces. From time to time, a child would raise his head and look at the sky, his pure eyes filled with purity. All living beings are in various forms, bustling and bustling. Throughout the promised land, various pictures continued to fall into Lin An's perception. Lin An's thoughts swept across it without any emotional fluctuations. The purple and black eyes quietly exuded a pale golden brilliance, and those eyes were too deep, as if they contained great terror. Lin An suddenly had a strange feeling, as if he had grasped something ethereal, as if he had grasped nothing. The two tables of passers-by had left at some point, and new customers sat in the tavern. The new customers left soon after, and new customers appeared. After they left and the tea cooled down, Lin An was still sitting on the edge of the railing, her eyes already fixed on the window, as if she had forgotten time. At the beginning of the lanterns, many people came back from outside. This city, which was still under construction, seemed to have a lot more life. The smell of human fireworks. Some people dragged their tired bodies back home. The moment the door was opened, the children at home rushed up and called for their father. Some of them gathered in groups of 2 or 3, drinking, eating meat, and chatting in taverns, with visible joy in their eyes. Unknowingly, it was late at night, and half of the city seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep, and the streets gradually became dead silent. This day seems to have passed. Lin An was already sitting there. The waiter had called several times, but Lin An turned a deaf ear. The next day, the morning light revealed a new life. Night falls and the day ends. The third day, the fourth day, the fifth day. Lin An's eyes became brighter and brighter, and the golden color in his eyes seemed to be about to complete a transformation. On the seventh day, under the old tree downstairs, a breeze blew, and a leaf trembled a few times and fell down. The space shook. Lin An appeared here instantly and stretched out his hand to take the leaf. This leaf also died the moment it was separated from the old tree. Lin raised his head and stared at the tiny night sky through the gaps between the branches. There was an expression of understanding on his face, and his eyes were filled with purple and black gold. Laws and collapse, creation and destruction. In the final analysis, it is life and death. When I think of life, thunder will be born, hurricanes will be born, and all things will be born. If I want to die, the fire will die, the vegetation will die, and all living things will die. One thought brings spiritual enlightenment to all things, one thought makes the blue water fall into the underworld. This is my Xuanhuan. In an instant, the light in Lin An's eyes completely turned into purple gold and black gold, and an unimaginable momentum was about to rise into the sky, but it dissipated under Lin An's thought. However, one could see the prototype of a huge vortex in the sky that was struck out at that moment. In a flash, Lin returned to the seat by the window. The waiter happened to come over at this moment, with a look of helplessness on his face. "Sir, you have been sitting here for 7 days. If it weren't for your extraordinary eyes, I would have thought you had passed away." Lin turned around and said, "Sorry to trouble you." Seeing Lin An suddenly turning his head, the waiter was obviously startled and took several steps back. In the past 7 days, he has come to see it no less than 10 times. You. The waiter was stunned and wanted to say something, but he couldn't. Lin An smiled kindly and said, "Go ahead and serve me another pot of soju. Replace all these dishes and put them on the table again." The waiter opened his mouth, and it took another 2 seconds to react. "Okay. Sir, please wait a moment." As he said this, the waiter turned around and walked downstairs while muttering about the weirdo in his heart. Lin An turned around, with a little joy in his eyes. Xuanhuan was much faster than he thought. He had already felt that it seemed that he was only one step away from the divine wilderness, but this step was like being separated by a layer of fog, making it difficult for him to see clearly or feel the direction. "I didn't expect that I would have such an opportunity when I came to Earth this time." It turned out that what he lacked was just this clue. Yes, it was just a clue. What he needed was just a little opportunity. In the 3,000 years of the Great Dream, he had experienced everything he should have experienced, and he had everything he should have. This opportunity was like a dike. The river in Lin An's belly could break the entire dike in an instant. With the thought, Lin An's will swept across half of the promised land, and soon found Yi Zhan's location. "Come to my place." Lin An's voice only rang in Yi Zhan's mind, and at the same time he did not hide his location, so Yi Zhan could naturally sense his location. Yi Zhan's face was happy, and he put down the things in his hands and flew directly. Nowadays, there are not many people who dare to fly directly in the sky in this promised land. After stopping downstairs, Yi Zhan adjusted his cuffs and collar, and then entered the restaurant. After declining the waiter's enthusiasm, Yi Zhan went straight up to the second floor and saw Lin An's figure at a glance. This figure seemed plain and simple, and seemed to be above the frosty sky. This figure seemed to be covered by a layer of mist. "I can see the laws of things." Author, Yi Tiao Xianyue. Chapter 370. His Lord Lindi's strength is even more terrifying. Yi Zhan's heart shivered, then he walked up to Lin An and bowed. "Yazan has met Mr. Lin Di." Lin An nodded, "No need to be polite, just sit down." Yi Zhan was secretly happy and sat down opposite Lin An. Lin An picked up the soju and was about to pour it into the bowl. Yi Zhan suddenly panicked and quickly stood up and grabbed the wine pot. "Lord Emperor Lin. Just let Yi Zhan do this little thing by himself. How dare you trouble Lord Lin to pour me wine?" Lin An was stunned for a moment and then relieved. In his eyes, it was just a trivial matter like pouring wine. Yi Zhan was the only person he knew on earth, so it didn't matter who poured it for whom. However, this matter was enough to make him panic in front of Yi Zhan. Lin An sighed secretly, "This is the gap in status, this is a gap that cannot be crossed." Lin's expression returned to calm. "How is the reconstruction going these days?" Yi Zhan's face became a little more solemn when he heard this. "In general, everything went smoothly. With your prestige, Mr. Lin Di, people's hope for rebirth is unprecedentedly strong, so the work is progressing very quickly. It's just..." Lin An said calmly, "Just what?" Yi Zhan looked embarrassed. "Not long ago, I suffered an assassination." Lin's eyes suddenly froze. "Who did it?" Yi Zhan hesitated for a moment. "It's Yu Xiao, the leader of the Yuxian tribe." Lin An's expression softened and he said calmly, "Tell me about their situation." Yi Zhan nodded. "This Yuxian tribe is one of the tribes at the same level as our Xuanhuan tribe, and came to the agreed place earlier than we did. It is said that this person is quite powerful, and he is also quite prestigious in the alliance in the agreed place. My subordinates guessed that this person coveted my position as commander, but he did not dare to go against you, Lord Lin, so he took action from me." Lin An listened quietly, his eyes resting outside the tavern, his eyes dull. With all kinds of thoughts running through his mind, Lin An spoke again, "What else?" Yi Zhan thought for a while. "That's all what's happening now." Lin An thought about it for a moment. "This matter is not a big problem, it's just because of your lack of strength. I will only help you this time. Speaking of which, with the development of human beings, the strength of your demigod really needs to be strengthened. Strengthen it? You can also use the small world I gave you with 50 times the flow of time. I won't say much about how to control your own time. Yi Zhan immediately became frightened and nodded like a pound of garlic. Lin An stood up, moved, and gradually disappeared on the spot. Thoughts swept across the entire promised land like a tsunami, and soon, the so-called Yuxian tribe fell into Lin An's eyes. With a flicker of his body, the space fluctuated, and Lin An was in the sky above Yu Xiao in an instant. This is already the center of the promised land, and with the construction on the periphery, it must be even more prosperous. If Lin An were to describe it, this place would be like an ancient palace. Yu Xiao, come out. Without any cover-up, Lin An appeared above the palace, speaking with overwhelming power. In the pavilion, Yu Xiao was hugging a delicate beauty. When he heard the voice, his face suddenly changed. The thoughts in his mind were running wildly, and his face soon turned pale. Pushing the beauty away, Yu Xiao stumbled 2 steps and ran out in a hurry. When he saw Lin An himself, his face couldn't help but become even paler. Lin An saw all this and felt calm in his heart. Yu Xiao flew up and stopped at a height lower than Lin An. He clasped his fists and bowed, "Sir Lin Di. If you have anything to do, just summon me to come and see you. Mr. Lin Di is here in person." "I'm sorry. I'm really terrified." Lin An said calmly, "I heard that you assassinated the Deputy Ground Commander Yi Zhan a few days ago." Yu Xiao immediately knelt down, "Lord Emperor Lin. It's unfair, it's unfair. The Deputy Commander was personally appointed by the Lord, how dare I assassinate him?" Lin An looked confused, "Unjustly accused? Then tell me, if it's not you, then who is it?" Yu Xiao suddenly looked stunned, This villain doesn't know." Lin An smiled faintly, "Since you don't know, then it's you." Yu Xiao's expression changed, "Lord Lin Di, what do you mean by this? I really don't know who did this, I really don't know, I'm really unjust, Lord Lin Di." Lin An's eyes were dull, but an indifferent smile appeared on his face. "Who did it, does it matter?" Yu Xiao was startled again, and then his face suddenly turned pale, and cold sweat started to flow from his temples. Tracking down the murderer is not the purpose, Emperor Lin's purpose is to establish prestige for Yazan. As the leader of the Yuxian tribe, Yu Xiao's mind is also extremely active. He had already reacted almost as soon as Lin An finished speaking. No matter whether the murderer is him or not, no matter whether there is evidence or not, as long as he has no conclusive evidence that someone else did it, he will not be able to escape this matter. Thinking of this, Yu Xiao couldn't help but laugh miserably, his eyes filled with despair. As expected of Mr. Lin Di, my vision is indeed too narrow. Whether or not there is evidence, this has no impact on you at all. Lin An's eyes turned, "So you admit that you did this?" Yu Xiao looked ashen, "Yes, I did it. Yi Zhan must have recognized me. I originally thought that without evidence, even if Yi Zhan didn't die, you, Emperor Lin, couldn't do anything to me. If I succeeded, I would have a great chance of getting the deputy rulership. I believe I have some reputation in all tribes." "But," Lin An said lightly, "but you didn't expect that I didn't intend to know whether the murderer was you from the beginning. I just wanted someone to die." Yu Xiao smiled bitterly, "Yes, as long as someone dies, you will be able to establish your prestige for Yi Zhan. It doesn't matter who the murderer is. You just need to tell the world the position of Yi Zhan in your heart. No one will dare to touch your majesty. It's ridiculous that I used to stand in my position to speculate on your possible countermeasures, and I was complacent about my so-called perfect plan. It's really ironic." Lin An smiled indifferently. That year, in the ancient tree secret realm, the dream lasted for 3,000 years. He, Lin An, was in the world for countless times. The so-called political conspiracy? It was just a joke. In Lin An's calm eyes, the terrifying light of purple gold and black gold appeared at some point. It can be seen that the air was slightly distorted just by the light. At this time, Yu Xiao suddenly bowed his head. Lord Lin, Yu Xiao is willing to turn back, and I beg Lord Lin to. Before he finished speaking, Yu Xiao's body had collapsed and dissipated, like a piece of snow blown away by the wind. Lin An slowly raised his head, and his figure gradually disappeared, leaving only his voice floating in the void. It's too hard to turn back.